Hey students, Mrs. Dukoski here. This is your Chapter 15 Catcher in the Rye video lesson. So if you haven't taken the time to watch the halfway point plot analysis video that I created and put out to you, please do so before you start Chapter 15. It's really important that you watch that video for a variety of reasons, especially since I give you like a really, pretty in-depth analysis of where we are in the plot at this halfway point. So with that, before you start chapter 15, please go back and watch the analysis video and make sure you're caught up with all of the reading. And then once you've done that, you're welcome to dig into chapter 15. So before we start chapter 15, we're going to do a be now together. And I'm going to offer you this one. This one is called a take 5 breaths, notice 5 things. So just to sort of like get yourself in your moment so that you can be focused. And again, you should be in an area where you feel it is easy for you to pay attention and to do some learning. So if you're not there, please find a place where you feel that you can be attentive to learning before you start this lesson. So if you need to pause and just get yourself to a nice learning space, do that first. And then once you are in your learning space, we're going to just sit together. You're welcome to stand. Sometimes I like to stand. I like to move around. Or you can even lie down. But what we're going to do is we're going to keep our eyes open wherever we are. And we're going to try to find our breath first. So we'll just start noticing our breath. We'll inhale through our nose. The belly should puff out, and the chest puffs out before you exhale. And you might even feel the breath at the back of your throat. And then you begin your slow exhale, and the breath starts to just kind of like ease out of your body, and the chest will lower and the belly will draw back and in. And then you'll start your next breath after you've exhaled everything. So don't leave any stale air in your body. You want to get all that carbon dioxide out of your body right before you take some nice oxygen in. So we're going to inhale that big deep breath and exhale all of the air out. And those cleansing breaths are just beautiful in and of themselves. But now what we're going to do, we're going to add to this breathing a look around the room and notice something. So I'm going to find something to fix my gaze on before I take my breath. And it could be anything, your choice. So look around your space and find one thing to fix your gaze on, your sight on, and really keep your gaze on that object, and then take your big breath in. So fixing your gaze on your object, take your big breath in, keep your gaze, exhale out. Then if you'd like to blink or just kind of move around for a minute, we're going to find another object to fix our gaze on. So look around your room, pick a different object, and fix your gaze on it. So your gaze is going to stay focused on this object. We're going to inhale, keep your gaze on your object, and we're going to exhale all the air out. We're going to do this 3 more times. Maybe you can hear the thunder behind me too. I'm videoing in this thunderstorm. With that said, I hope it's not distracting. It's actually kind of lovely. So inhale, finding an object, a new object, fixing your gaze. Exhale, keep your gaze on the object, exhale all the air out. 2 more times. A new object, fix your gaze, really focus on it, look at it, notice it, see what colors are in it, see what lines are in it, see if there's shadows, notice the size, pay attention to it completely. Inhaling in, paying attention to the object with your sight, exhaling out. Finally, choose one more object in your space and really look at it, focusing your attention on its whole being, right? Look at it, examine it with your gaze, inhaling in, exhaling out as you keep your gaze fixed to that object. Then you can close your eyes, you can kind of shake it out. You want to throw in a couple neck rolls. Before we get started, I want to talk about a term that is going to be a new term for us. So before I do a screen share, I wrote for you. I don't have paper in my space right now, but I am recycling. This is a nice bag. Oh, and I see I think that it's going to be backwards. I didn't even think about that. That's kind of funny. So this is going to be our word of the day. It's a literary technique called juxtaposition. So we're going to go over that. And we kind of looked around our space because I want you to try to find something in your space that might be an example of juxtaposition. So if you don't know what juxtaposition is, I'm going to do a screen share and we're going to talk about this word. It's a technique that we're going to see a couple of different times in chapter 15. So here goes my screen share. And I love this word. How much fun is this word, right? Let me underline it. Juxtaposition. Sometimes you'll hear the word juxtapose. What's that mean? I hope you know what it means. But it does happen in literature and it happens in life. So let's talk about it in regard to when we're reading and what that looks like. So I'm going to start my screen share. And again, this is our focus for this chapter. It's a fun word, and I love using it in this chapter of Catcher in the Rye. So if you are in Schoology, you can open your chapter 15 lesson. It looks like this. And it will also, this is what I put in the descriptions for the YouTube videos too, so you'll have it available there. So we did our Be Now. If you need the chapter 14 review, you can hit that up first. And then we're going to talk about this juxtaposition. All right, so there's a couple of examples. The most obvious is through the use of contrasting characters or foils. So you've probably heard this term before in literature. Foils are characters that are opposite, and they're designed that way by the writer because if you take two characters who are opposite and put them together, it really highlights their, character traits. So because you see it through the contrast of an opposite. If you're Sherlock Holmes fans, Watson and Sherlock Holmes are great examples of foils. So with that said, we see foils from chapter 14 to chapter 15. But there's they're the most obvious examples of juxtaposition, the foils, but there are other examples in this chapter of juxtaposition. So if you're not sure what that term means, I put a little link here that'll take you to a further explanation of juxtaposition. But it's really when you take two things that are opposite, that are really contrasting, and you place them side by side to bring out their differences. So you'll see this in life. And you'll see this in literature, and that's why I kind of asked you to look around your room. So we're going to just take a pause right now to look around our room again, and maybe some of the objects that you were looking at in our Be Now could qualify as juxtaposition or juxtaposing, right? So look around your room and see if you can find two things that you think are sort of in contrast with each other or opposites. And maybe you'll find something, or maybe you won't find something, or maybe you'll think of something like in the example of your day. So maybe something happened that you feel was an example of juxtaposition in your day. So maybe you did one activity and then you did another activity that was so opposite of that activity, and they were side by side. So it really highlighted how different they were. So this happens again in our life, and it happens in literature, and it is a technique that writers will use, and you can use too in your writing, to highlight these contrasting things or people. All right, so when they're people, they're called foils. So with that, that's our focus of this lesson, is juxtaposition. So I'm not going to give them away. We'll try to figure out, and we'll talk about at the end of this lesson, what were the examples of juxtaposition in chapter 15. So kind of like put that on your radar as we read this chapter. I know Salinger is using contrasts in this chapter to highlight things. I know that there's an example with characters, definitely. And they're going to be foils to characters from the previous chapter. So that's kind of like a little bit of a hint for you. there's my thunder rumbling. But there's also other things. So think of like what kind of contrasts there are in this chapter that would kind of highlight for us as the reader some things going on in the story. Right? And then also just keep checking Schoology for assignments. We're going to have another quiz soon after chapter 16. So, there's probably going to be some review stuff out there and just, some other things that you might find helpful to get you through to the next quiz that we have. All right, with that said, I'm going to stop my share for a second just to say hi. So we're about to start chapter 15. Again, I like kind of looking at you so we can get to know each other. I know, even though it's virtually. In this chapter, we have this juxtaposition, right? So be on the lookout. Try to find some examples yourself as we read, and we'll talk about them at the end of the video too. So with that, I'm going to go back to the screen share, and we're going to get into our chapter 15 reading. So find your PDF, get comfortable, and here we go with chapter 15, Catcher in the Rye. All right, chapter 15. So chapter 15 is on my PDF, page 57, but again, this is blown up a little bit, but you'll find it. There's a nice 15 there. And we had, keeping in mind, we had a whole conversation about this in the halfway point plot analysis. Holden, at the end of Saturday, late Saturday night, early Sunday morning, he ended up in a bathtub thinking about killing himself, all right? Committing suicide. So if you haven't, again, gotten into that halfway point analysis video, please do so because I really talk in depth about this scene. So he's going to wake up the next morning, keeping in mind it's now Sunday morning. So this might be something to consider when we're talking about juxtaposition and contrasting. The last night, chapter 14, was Saturday night, and now we're in Sunday morning, and then we're going to kind of see what happens in the first part of Holden's day on what is now Sunday morning. All right, so here we go. I didn't sleep too long because I think it was only around 10 o'clock when I woke up. I felt pretty hungry as soon as I had a cigarette. The last time I'd eaten was those 2 hamburgers I had with Broussard and Ackley when we went into Hagerstown to the movies. That was a long time ago. It seemed like 50 years ago, even though it was just the night before. The phone was right next to me, and I started to call down and have them send up some breakfast, but I was sort of afraid they might send it up with old Maurice. If you think I was dying to see him again, you're crazy. So I just laid around in bed for a while and smoked another cigarette. I thought of giving old Jane a buzz to see if she was home yet and all, but I wasn't in the mood. What I did do, I gave old Sally Hayes a buzz. She went to Mary A. Woodruff, and I knew she was home because I had this letter from her a couple of weeks ago. I wasn't too crazy about her, but I'd known her for years. I used to think she was quite intelligent in my stupidity. The reason I did was because she knew quite a lot about the theater and plays and literature and all that stuff. If somebody knows quite a lot about those things, it takes you quite a while to find out whether they're really stupid or not. It took me years to find it out in old Sally's case. I think I'd have found it out sooner if we hadn't necked so damn much. My big trouble is I always sort of think whoever I'm necking with is a pretty intelligent person. It hasn't got a goddamn thing to do with it, but I keep thinking it anyway. Anyway, I gave her a buzz. First, the maid answered, then her father. Then she got on. Sally, I said. Yes, who is this? She said. She was quite a little foamy. I already told her father who it was. Holden Caulfield. How are you? Holden, I'm fine. How are you? Swell. Listen, how are you anyway? I mean, how's school? Fine, she said. I mean, swell. Well, listen, I was wondering if you were busy today. It's Sunday, but there's always 1 or 2 matinees going on Sunday. Benefits, that stuff. Would you care to go? I'd love to. Grand. Grand. If there's one word I hate, it's grand. It's so phony. For a second, I was tempted to tell her to forget about the matinee, but we chewed the fat for a while. That is, she chewed it. You couldn't get a word in edgewise. First, she told me about some Harvard guy. It probably was a freshman, but she didn't say, naturally, that was rushing hell out of her. Calling her up night and day. Night and day. That killed me. Then she told me about some other guy, some West Point cadet, that was cutting his throat over her, too. Big deal. I told her to meet me under the clock at the Biltmore at 2 o'clock and not to be late, because the show probably started at 2:30. She was always late. Then I hung up. She gave me a pain in the ass, but she was very good looking. After I made the date with old Sally, I got out of bed and got dressed and packed my bag. I took a look out the window before I left the room, though, to see how all the perverts were doing. But they all had their shades down. They were the height of modesty in the morning. Then I went down in the elevator and checked out. I didn't see old Maurice around anywhere. I didn't break my neck looking for him, naturally, the bastard. I got a cab outside the hotel. But I didn't have the faintest damn idea where I was going. I had no place to go. It was only Sunday. I couldn't go home till Wednesday or Tuesday, the soonest. And I certainly didn't feel like going to another hotel and getting my brains beat out. So what I did, I told the driver to take me to Grand Central Station. It was right near the Biltmore, where I was meeting Sally later. And I figured what I'd do, I'd check my bags in one of those strong boxes that they give you a key to, then get some breakfast. I was sort of hungry. While I was in the cab, I took out my wallet and sort of counted my money. I don't remember exactly what I had left, but it was no fortune or anything. I had spent a king's ransom in about 2 lousy weeks. I really had. I'm a goddamn spendthrift at heart. What I don't spend, I lose. Half the time, I sort of forget to pick up my change at restaurants and nightclubs and all. It drives my parents crazy. You can't blame them. My father's quite wealthy, though. I don't know how much he makes. He's never discussed that stuff with me, but I imagine quite a lot. He's a corporation lawyer. Those boys really haul it in. Another reason I know he's quite well off, he's always investing money in shows on Broadway. They always flop, though, and it drives my mother crazy when he does it. She hasn't felt too healthy since my brother Allie died. She's very nervous. That's another reason why I hated like hell for her to know I got fiacs again. After I put my bags in one of those strong boxes at the station, I went into this little sandwich bar and had breakfast. I had quite a large breakfast for me. Orange juice, bacon, eggs, toast, coffee. Usually I just drink some orange juice. I'm a very light eater. I really am. That's why I'm so damn skinny. I was supposed to be on this diet where you eat a lot of starches and crap to gain weight and all, but I didn't ever do it. When I'm out somewhere, I generally just eat a Swiss cheese sandwich and a malted milk. It isn't much, but you get quite a lot of vitamins in the malted milk. H.V. Caulfield. Holden Vitamin Caulfield. While I was eating my eggs, these 2 nuns with suitcases and all, I guess they were moving to another convent or something, were waiting for a train. Came in and sat down next to me at the counter. They didn't seem to know what the hell. Whoa, that was a big boom. Whoa, sorry. Oh my gosh, it sounds like fireworks. Oh my gosh, it's thunderous. Oh boy. Oh boy, my daughter. Sorry for the pause. Sweetie, it's okay. Just move seats. Sorry for that. We had a thunderous interruption. They didn't seem to know what the hell to do with their suitcases, so I gave them a hand. They were very inexpensive looking suitcases, the ones that aren't genuine leather or anything. It isn't important, I know, but I hate it when somebody has cheap suitcases. It sounds terrible to say, but I can even get to hate somebody just looking at them if they have cheap suitcases with them. Something happened once. For a while, when I was at Elkton Hills, I roomed with this boy, Dick Slagle, that had these very inexpensive suitcases. He used to keep them under the bed instead of on the rack, so that nobody'd see them standing next to mine. It depressed holy hell out of me. And I kept wanting to throw mine out or something, or even trade with him. Mine came from Mark Cross, and they were genuine cowhide and all that crap, and I guess they cost quite a pretty penny. But it was a funny thing. Here's what happened. What I did, I finally put my suitcases under my bed instead of on the rack so that old Slagle wouldn't get a goddamn inferiority complex about it. But here's what he did. The day after I put mine under the bed, he took them out and put them back on the rack. The reason he did it It took me a while to find out because he wanted people to think my bags were his. He really did. It was a very funny guy that he was a very funny guy that way. He was always saying snotty things about them. My suitcases, for instance. He kept saying they were too new and bourgeois. That was his favorite goddamn word. He read it somewhere or heard it somewhere. Everything I had was bourgeois as hell. Even my fountain pen was bourgeois. He borrowed it off of me all the time, but it was bourgeois anyway. We only roomed together about 2 months. Then we both asked to be moved. And the funny thing was, I sort of missed him after we moved because he had a hell of a good sense of humor, and we had a lot of fun sometimes. I wouldn't be surprised if he missed me too. At first, he only used to be kidding when he called my stuff bourgeois, and I didn't give a damn. It was sort of funny, in fact. Then after a while, you could tell he wasn't kidding anymore. The thing is, it's really hard to be roommates with people if your suitcases are much better than theirs. If yours are really good ones and theirs aren't, you think if they're intelligent and all, the other person, and have a good sense of humor, that they don't give a damn whose suitcases are better. But they do. They really do. It's one of those reasons why I roomed with a stupid bastard like Stradlater. At least his suitcases were as good as mine. Anyway, these two nuns were sitting next to me, and we sort of struck up a conversation. The ones right next to me had one of those straw baskets that you see nuns and Salvation Army babes collecting dough with around Christmas time. You see them standing on corners, especially on Fifth Avenue, in front of the big department stores and all. Anyway, the one next to me dropped hers on the floor, and I reached down and picked it up for her. I asked her if she was out collecting money for charity and all. She said no. She said she couldn't get it in her suitcase when she was packing it, and she was just carrying it. She had a pretty nice smile when she looked at you. She had a big nose, and she had on those glasses with sort of iron rims that aren't too attractive. But she had a hell of a kind face. I thought if you were taking up a collection, I told her, I could make a small contribution. You could keep the money for when you do take up a collection. Oh, how very kind of you, she said. And the other one, her friend, looked over at me. The other one was reading a little black book while she drank her coffee. It looked like a Bible, but it was too skinny. It was a Bible-type book, though. All the two of them were eating for breakfast was toast and coffee. That depressed me. I hate it if I'm eating bacon and eggs or something and somebody else is only eating toast and coffee. They let me give them $10 as a contribution. They kept asking me if I was sure I could afford it and all. I told them I had quite a bit of money with me, but they didn't seem to believe me. They took it, though, finally. The both of them kept thanking me so much it was embarrassing. I swung the conversation around to general topics and asked them where they were going. They said they were school teachers and they'd just come from Chicago and that they were going to start teaching at some convent on 168th Street and 186th Street, or one of those streets way the hell uptown. The one next to me with the iron glasses, she taught English, and her friend taught history and American government. Then I started wondering like a bastard what the one sitting next to me that taught English thought about being a nun and all when she read certain books for English. Books not necessarily with a lot of sexy stuff in them, but books with lovers and all in them. Take old Estacia Vi and The Return of the Native by Thomas Hardy. She wasn't too sexy or anything, but even so, you can't help wondering what a nun maybe thinks about when she reads about old Estacia. I didn't say anything though, naturally. All I said was English was my best subject. Oh, really? Oh, I'm so glad, the one with the glasses that taught English said. What have you read this year? I'd be very interested to know. She was really nice. Well, most of the time we were on the Anglo-Saxons, Beowulf, Old Grendel, and Lord Randall, my son, and all those things. But we had to read outside books for extra credit once in a while. I read The Return of the Native by Thomas Hardy and Romeo and Juliet and Julius. Oh, Romeo and Juliet, lovely. Didn't you just love it? She certainly didn't sound much like a nun. Yes, I did like it a lot. There were a few things I didn't like about it, but it was quite moving on the whole. What didn't you like about it? Can you remember? To tell you the truth, it was sort of embarrassing in a way to be talking about Romeo and Juliet with her. I mean, that play gets pretty sexy in some parts, and she was a nun and all, but she asked me, so I discussed it with her for a while. Well, I'm not too crazy about Romeo and Juliet, I said. I mean, I like them, but I don't know. They get pretty annoying sometimes. I mean, I felt much sorrier when old Mercutio got killed than when Romeo and Juliet did. The thing is, I think, the thing is, I never liked Romeo too much after Mercutio gets stabbed by that other man, Juliet's cousin. What's his name? Tybalt. That's right, Tybalt. I said. I always forgot that guy's name. It was Romeo's fault. I mean, I liked him the best in the play, old Mercutio. I don't know. All those Montagues and Capulets, they're all right, especially Juliet. But Mercutio, it's hard to explain. He was very smart and entertaining and all. The thing is, it drives me crazy if somebody gets killed, especially somebody very smart and entertaining and all, and it's somebody else's fault. Romeo and Juliet, at least it was their own fault. What school do you go to? She asked me. She probably wanted to get off the subject of Romeo and Juliet. I told her Pensy, and she'd heard of it. She said it was a very good school. I let it pass, though. Then the other one, the one that taught history and government, said they'd better be running along. I took the check off them, but they wouldn't let me pay. The one with the glasses made me give it back to her. You've been more than generous, she said. You're a very sweet boy. She certainly was nice. She reminded me a little bit of old Ernest Morrow's mother, the one I met on the train, when she smiled mostly. We've enjoyed talking to you so much, she said. I said I'd enjoyed talking to them a lot, too. I meant it, too. I'd have enjoyed it even more, though, I think, if I hadn't been sort of afraid. The whole time I was talking to them, that they'd all of a sudden try to find out if I was Catholic. Catholics are always trying to find out if you're Catholic. Happens to me a lot. I know partly because my last name is Irish, and most people of Irish descent are Catholics. As a matter of fact, my father was a Catholic once. He quit, though, when he married my mother. But Catholics are always trying to find out if you're a Catholic, even if they don't know your last name. I knew this one Catholic boy, Louis Shaney, when I was at the Wooten School. He was the first boy I ever met there. He and I were sitting in the first two chairs outside the goddamn infirmary the day after school opened, waiting for our physicals, and we sort of struck up this conversation about tennis. He was quite interested in tennis, and so was I. He told me he went to the Nationals at Forest Hills every summer, and I told him I did too, and then we talked about certain hotshot tennis players for quite a while. He knew quite a lot about tennis for a kid his age. He really did. Then after a while, right in the middle of the goddamn conversation, he asked me, did you happen to notice where the Catholic Church is in town by any chance? The thing was, you could tell by the way he asked me that he was trying to find out if I was Catholic. He really was. Not that he was prejudiced or anything, but he just wanted to know. He was enjoying the conversation about tennis and all. But you could tell he would have enjoyed it more if I was Catholic and all. That kind of stuff drives me crazy. I'm not saying it ruined our conversation or anything, it didn't, but it sure as hell didn't do it any good. That's why I was glad those two nuns didn't ask me if I was Catholic. It would have spoiled the conversation if they had, but it wouldn't have been different, probably. I'm not saying I blame Catholics. I don't. I'd be the same way, probably, if I was a Catholic. It's just like those suitcases I was telling you about, in a way. All I'm saying is that it's no good for a nice conversation. That's all I'm saying. When they got up to go, the two nuns, I did something very stupid and embarrassing. I was smoking a cigarette, and when I stood up to say goodbye to them, by mistake, I blew some smoke in their face. I didn't mean to, but I did it. I apologized like a madman, and they were very polite and nice about it, but it was very embarrassing anyway. After they left, I started getting sorry that I'd only given them $10 for their collection. But the thing was, I made that date to go to the matinee with old Sally Hayes, and I needed to keep some dough for the tickets and stuff. I was sorry anyway, though. Goddamn money. It always ends up making you blue as hell. End of chapter. So, here I am in my thunderstorm, right? I hope that wasn't too interruptive. It just adds some spice, some thundering spice. With that, chapter 15, juxtaposition. And there's a couple other things I want to talk about before we end our video. What's contrasting in this chapter? So remember chapter 14, Saturday night? What time of day is it in chapter 15? Think about that. It's Sunday morning. So therein, that timing is a contrast, what you might expect on a Saturday night versus a Sunday morning. And then start thinking about what Holden did on a Saturday night. Who was he with on a Saturday night? Oh, that's right. Maurice and Sonny, a pimp and a prostitute. I'm going to pause for a second, juxtapose that. I don't know if this is going to come out the right way. Juxtapose his Saturday night with a pimp and a prostitute with his Sunday morning. Who is he with now? 2 nuns, right? So he's got 2 nuns on a Sunday morning having nice conversation, right? Lovely conversation about books, Romeo and Juliet in particular. So that's interesting. That's juxtaposition. They're foils, right? The pimp and the prostitute and the 2 nuns. The time that Salinger has him with the pimp and the prostitute versus the time that he's with the nuns, Sunday morning versus Saturday night, right? Think about those 2 times. And then think about, there's something that they have in common. Holden actually spends the same amount of money Saturday night with Sonny and Maurice. He spends $10. Remember, he tries to spend $5 and then they come back and they take 5 more, totaling $10. Sonny and Maurice. How much does he donate to the nuns for their good cause, right? $10 in their basket for the Salvation Army. All right, let's kind of think about that. Wow, is that purposeful or what by Salinger? And I might make you write about it and not kind of like feed you with ideas. That seems like a good writing prompt. Like, how is that a purposeful contrast by Salinger, that it would be considered a good juxtaposition with that Saturday night with Sonny and Maurice and giving them $10, and the next Sunday morning with the nuns and donating them $10, and maybe we can kind of like start to have some things going on in our heads, making some connections there. So that's what we've got for some juxtaposition. There are probably some other things that maybe you picked up in the chapter, and I might have you write about that too if you saw anything else that kind of like stood out as opposites or contrasts, because our focus was juxtaposition. With that, one other thing I want to mention is he kind of talks a little bit about class structure. And he does this indirectly, and I like how Salinger gives these little anecdotes. The one about the suitcases and the one about rooming with people, and they're kind of all blended together, where he gives just some, you know, it's an like indirect analysis about spending time with people who are a little bit different than yourself. And he does it with the conversation about being Catholic or not being Catholic. So something to think about too, some food for thought. What does Holden suggest, and what kind of, you know, tone do you think he has? What kind of attitude comes with the, you know, thoughts about class structure and, you know, I guess Holden being in school with people that might either be a different class from himself or a different religion from himself. And there is some suggestion there about society during that time, some of the norms of how people treated one another, maybe even if it wasn't purposeful, but it does just sort of happen. And he mentions that, how people maybe ended up like getting along with one another if they were in different classes or from different backgrounds. Particularly his example is religious backgrounds. So with that, I'll leave you with those 2 thoughts and look out for some writing assignments based on those topics. Okay, be well out there. Bye.